Well, welcome back to MINDtalk, where we like to bridge the disconnect between what brain science knows and what people do. Now, when social pain is playing within the dynamics of the group, this can exacerbate what we call cognitive biases. Now, what is a cognitive bias? Well, cognitive bias is a mental shortcut. It is what our brains tend to do to save time and energy. And that's the benefit of these cognitive biases. We get to where we need to go faster. But in some situations, we need more cognitive investment so we can analyze the situation and make more proactive choices. Now, what's so insidious about these cognitive biases is that they creep in. Now, most people don't even know about cognitive biases and how they play into what we do or how we function. Now, there's three specific cognitive biases that I want to talk about. Now, the first cognitive bias is what's called in-group, out-group bias. Now, this means when a group fragments, when a team starts to fall apart, they will form small cliques within that team. Now, what happens is anyone within my group, the in-group, is favorable. I see them more favorable to anyone who falls outside that, which we call the out-group. That means I tend to favor or give them credit where credit is due. And those on the out group, well, I don't favor them at all. Now, it is at that point we start seeing us versus them thinking. Where, when we see us as human beings. And we can actually begin sort of mental unconscious strategies to no longer see people in the out group as human beings. We tend to find language that dehumanizes them. It makes it easier for us to disconnect from who they are and what they are about. So once you start having this sort of us versus them thinking, this leads to another cognitive bias, which is called fundamental attribution error. What that means is if I do something wrong, I will blame it on the situation. It was the situation that caused me to do something. But if someone in the out group does something wrong, well, I'll blame that on their personality. For example, if I cut someone off in traffic, I can justify it to myself. It was a situation that I had to get somewhere. I was rushing to a meeting and I had to cut someone off. Well, if it was someone else doing that, then I would have blamed it on the personality. I would have said he was a lousy driver. He was just incompetent. That's just who he is or who she is. Now, what fundamental attribution error is then is that I blame negative behavior or I assign negative behavior to people in the out group to their personality. Now, if I had negative behavior myself or someone in my group, then I would blame it on the situation. I would assign it to the situation. This leads to a third cognitive bias called confirmation bias. Basically, what this means is that we tend to only see information or behavior that supports our negative beliefs about those other people in the out group. Now, a lot of this is very insidious because it happens on an unconscious level. Meaning, simple terms, is that we see what we only wish to see. So confirmation bias kicks in even to a higher degree when we're talking about emotionally charged issues, which is synonymous with dysfunctional teams. I mean, negative emotions are just charged in almost any interaction or dialogue we have. So what does this mean? Well, over time, if nothing is done to address the dysfunctional teams, over time we truly begin to believe that is the personality of the people in the out group that are the cause for all the problems, all the dysfunctions within the group. I mean, working with teams is not a walk in the park. It takes time, it takes dedication, both from the team leader and the team members themselves. We can talk about team management theory, we can talk about social theory, but at the end of the day, what really has to happen is to teach people about the fundamentals of how the brain is working. And it's also to make them aware of these cognitive biases that are constantly playing in the background. You don't have to believe gravity exists, but it's there whether you believe it or not. Well, these cognitive biases are in play whether you believe it or not. By addressing these biases and by addressing some of the factors that lead to dysfunction, you can turn around teams. I have seen teams turn around and become very functional. Now, how about doing this in a very detailed way is beyond the scope of this short episode. But what is important is that communication is there. Now, I'm not just talking about the abstract term of communication, but real deep communication, feedback, expectations, coaching, exploring thinking, but also that there is a sense of transparency, and sometimes how we create transparency is through rules of engagement. And also, sometimes you need what's called rules of disengagement. What is acceptable and what is unacceptable behavior? Running with all this, putting it all together, you eventually move towards a functional team, but it takes time. Like anything, you're trying to move a team from one type of habit, which has become their default way of interacting, communicating, and trying to create a new behavior. And behaviors take anywhere from 45 days to 60 days just to establish a baseline. Well, as usual, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please let me know. Email, through Facebook, through Twitter, what have you. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. But until the next time we talk together, keep well, and we'll speak soon. Thanks for now.